Hey, welcome to 9394, a music podcast with me, Travis. Thanks for joining me. As always, I appreciate it. Look, every time I do this show, I gush about how much I love this show because I love talking about music. I love talking with people about music I love having guests on the show that have come back. I love having guests that are new, and I love having friends come on the show. And I really love when I have a friend come on the show for the first time. Someone I've been trying to get to come on for, at this point, well over a year. And this time, it is my good friend, Cory Worley. He has come to talk about the album. He has come to talk about the self-titled album from the Sea and Cake. He has come to talk about the self-titled album from the Sea and Cake that was released in 1993. Check it out. Hello?
Alright, so there I'm unmuted.
You sound terrible.
Really? I was worried about background noise, so I had the microphone right in my face.
Okay, I think that's the problem. You sound better already.
I'm out on the front porch, like actually outside my house.
It's quieter.
It's quieter, yeah. So
whatever works.
So yeah,
That's
I
fine.
got here.
Cool.
Here I am.
It's funny to see you on Zoom because when I do this podcast, I'm often seeing...
You don't get to see so often?
Exactly. People that are friends that I never see in person, but it's like, hey, it's good to see you over Zoom, but you I see on a weekly basis, and now it's weird to see you on Zoom. It's like, oh, hey.
It's my Zoom demeanor. And if it was a business meeting, it would look like this.
Oh, so it's, you're warm and inviting to others.
I'm kidding. Of course. I'm always the same, you know that. I can't try. Even if I tried to put on airs, it would become a joke pretty quickly.
Hey, and if you're outside, then you can smoke. Well, should we get into the recording the episode? You ready?
Let's do it.
Cool. Let's do it. Cory, welcome to 9394. So happy to have you, bud.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited.
I'm excited too. My goal is to one by one get all of my oldest friends on this show, and you are one of my oldest friends. I always start the show talking about. Well, actually, first we should talk about what album are we doing today?
We are doing The Sea and Cake by The Sea and Cake
from 1994, I believe, right?
Nope.
93?
September of 93.
September of 93. Oh, Spotify says 94. It's a liar.
Dude, so we'll get into that as we start going through this, but yes, there's a lot.
Well, Wikipedia says October 20th, 1994 from Thrill Jockey.
Well, Thrill Jockey.
It was recorded in 1993.
Okay.
According to Wikipedia.
Sense. I don't know. Like I said, we'll get into it, but there's a lot of this time in music, and I'm sure this comes up a lot in the show because we focus on this time in music, but it's like we know more about it now than we did then.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I didn't even know this album existed for a long time.
I didn't know it existed for a couple of years, yeah.
Okay. Well, we'll get into that. We'll come back to The Sea and Cake. So tell the people how you and I know one another.
Oh my God! How do we not know one about that?
Biblically?
Not yet.
We'll get there.
Oh no. I was joking. So we know each other because the most basic way of saying it is we grew up in the same neighborhood.
Yeah.
And then in that neighborhood that had a lot of diverse kids, we were very similar and our interests aligned closely. And, we all found each other. Actually, I was closer with your older brother, Judd. Oh, Jesus. Wow, you're throwing me back.
It depends on when, because you were closer with me first.
We were friends when we were kids.
Right, because we met when we were 11, I believe.
Yes, that's exactly right. We were 11, and we started hanging around in the neighborhood.
Lots of
we
walking.
Started trying to make bands and stuff like that. Lots of walking around and smoking cigarettes.
Mm-hmm. Around 1994 or so, 93.
Yep. Even earlier than that.
Yeah, even earlier.
But yeah, I don't know. It was, Jesus, so much to get into. But like our friend group was, if we took that group of friends from when we were 10 and 11 and fast forwarded, like we'd all like hit it off right away.
Mm-hmm.
But we were kids and there was lots of other stuff going on, kid stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And you and I maybe didn't hit it off like we weren't close right away.
We had a lot of friends that were friends, so we hung out, but we weren't exactly friends ourselves early on, I feel like, necessarily.
Yeah, like our attitudes kind of like...
We butted heads a little bit.
Yeah, and I'm talking about when we were...
Yeah, like 12, 13.
11, 12, yeah. Like,
I was a dick to everyone when I was 13, for the record. I mean, I've said that on the show before. I had deep issues in that era. I know I was hard to get along with. I know I was.
You were hard to get along with because of the things you said, which also, that's what makes your personality great. But it was just the kid version of it.
Thanks.
And I think same with me, right? Like I had like a strong sense of like justice and like being nice and stuff. Which my version of being nice was like beat up anyone who's not nice. So
we never fought physically, though. I will say that.
I punched you in the face once during a game. Yep, I punched you in the face once during a game of Slaughterball. Slaughterball doesn't count?
Slaughterball doesn't count. I mean, it was fucking called Slaughterball.
Oh, thank God, because I still feel guilty about that.
Oh, you did give me a bloody nose, I believe.
Yeah, I socked you right in the face.
I'm over it. It was Slaughterball. It's okay.
Well, now that you say you're over it, I'm more over it.
You can let it go. It's been 30 years. Forgiven, forgotten.
But I always liked you, like, despite however our interpersonal stuff happened when we were real little, like, I always liked you a lot, and, like, you were a person that I thought was, like, cool, and, cool people were hard to come by.
Thank you.
Then.
We talk about, like, as if there was all this division between us. It took us so long to get together. But by the time we were 15, we were in a band together.
Right, give it 2 years. And
yeah, you were in my first like real band. I was in. Oh, maybe that's not fair to some of the stuff I did with my friends Andrew and Keith. We certainly we were a real band, and actually even before that, did you play with me and Mike Neal and Gary Lutz and those guys in like 8th grade? You jammed with us some then too, right? I feel like you did.
Yes, that was like our first band. I'm sure it was all of our first band.
But then we had the punk band Coke Bones Malone, which was
a couple years later was so much better. But we were doing at that time. We were interested in like alternative, grungy type stuff.
And then flash forward like 2 years, we got into punk, and we got a lot more focused about being in a band, a lot more serious about being in a band, started recording and all that kind of stuff, and playing shows.
Yeah. No, I actually remember how that goes. And I don't blame anybody because of my attitudes and everything at the time. And I feel like it was more like how I was perceived more than how I actually was. But I understand all that.
Understand what? Wait, I'm confused.
Time we were like 10 or 12 years old. But my family was like very like Christian and uptight. And a lot of that came through in me back then. And I think that made people like uncomfortable a little bit, like feeling judged and stuff. At least that's my perception. Whatever the perception was, it was that I wasn't as cool as Erin, what's her name, who took over for bass duties.
It turns out you were significantly cooler.
Yeah. Who knew back then?
Who knew? But yeah, we made it work. I mean, a lot of the things that you're describing, I mean, I was a very opinionated 13-year-old as
Of
well.
course, we all were. That's why we all got together. And that's why we got drawn so much to the punk thing. Is like we're abrasive people. Yeah. I mean, and then even fast forwarding from there and playing the tape forward from that time, like 15 years, we were extremely abrasive people.
And then we hit 30 and calmed down.
Hey, come on. Let's be nice. Yeah.
So yeah, we have a long and storied history. I mean, that's not even getting into the last few years where you and I didn't talk or hang out for a pretty long time. We had kind of a weird, just, I don't know, shit happened. And
don't even start with that.
Yeah, we don't even get into all that.
Into my marriage and all that. We'll be here forever. It's just too much to get into.
We don't need to do that. But as of late, the summer of 2024 in particular, it's been pretty much, we've been attached to the hip, which has been great.
Yeah, I've really enjoyed that time as well.
Me too. So, The Sea and Cake, how did you get into this album? Do you remember?
I do. This is what I was hinting at earlier. Like, it's just such a mess. But when I was kind of thinking about how I would convey the story of how I got into The Sea and Cake, it really started, if you'll remember, or maybe you don't, either way, I had a long-running habit of dating girls that were baristas and then later bartenders and the whole thing.
No, I don't remember that, actually.
Yeah. All the Beckys, I also had a bad habit of dating Beckys. But all the Beckys I dated, they were all baristas or bartenders. And especially early on, back closer to this time, I was not driving, and my girlfriends were, so I would end up spending a lot of time. Birds are gone, and here comes the cicada.
I was going to say, is that a fucking cicada? Okay.
So I was spending a lot of time in coffee shops, just sitting around.
About how old were you?
I was about 14, 15.
Okay.
16, right around then.
Interesting, because we were sitting in coffee shops, but that coffee shop was all just big boy, the rest of us.
Right.
You were going to real coffee shops.
Yes. When I was not with you guys, I was with my girlfriends. In retrospect, I spent way too much time hanging around these ladies.
You always were one of those guys.
I don't know. Anyways, I'm a romantic. What can I say? I would spend so much time sitting in these coffee shops, and usually bookstores and coffee shops. So I was always like sitting there reading and listening to the music that they played over the coffee shop. And that is where I heard The Sea and Cake for the first time.
Was it this album?
Yes, because they didn't have much else out besides that during the time that I first started hearing.
Seems like really good coffee shop music.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. And I think that was like their niche,
I never
like,
thought of it.
I didn't hear them anywhere else.
Yeah.
I heard them at coffee shops.
That's funny.
When I was sitting there waiting around, and this music was so appealing to me, and I loved it. I had already been into jazz guitar, big into jazz guitar, mostly because the Takis's...
Friends of ours, yep.
Friends of ours, the Takises, who's a musical family, and they were like, they're that family that kind of takes everybody in. It's a place to go. And me and Jimmy Takis were good friends. So I was exposed to a lot of like jazz, especially jazz guitar playing. They were much more into blues, but because of the overlap, I got into like Django Reinhardt and stuff like that. And I just fucking loved that guitar playing and like what you could do with a guitar that was so different from things that were sort of mainstream at the time and what people were doing with the guitar. And it really super caught my attention sitting in those coffee shops, just not knowing what it was.
Yeah.
It was so hard. I'm sure, again, this is a main theme since you're focusing on this time, but it was so hard to figure out what music was, like what label are they on?
Right. You couldn't Shazam it.
What's the band? What other bands were in? You couldn't just look it up.
Right.
You just heard a song that you like and you're like, fuck, how do I track that down?
Yeah.
So I started hearing Jacking the Ball, which is the first song of that album. And it stands out a little bit. It's a little bit different. It's probably the most kind of
accessible, probably.
Accessible.
There's a reason why it's the first song on the album.
Yeah, exactly. But it's great.
Oh yeah, love it.
Great song, and was more similar to other things that were happening with music at that time and everything. So that was a big song, and then there was a couple of others off that album. They got played in rotation at these coffee shops, but the singer and guitar player and the bassist were in an earlier band called Shrimp Boat.
Yeah, I never heard them actually. I never listened to them.
Very similar.
Yeah.
Very similar. If you like the Sea and Cake, you'll like Shrimp Boat. It's very, very similar. But the reason I bring them up is just because back then when you're trying to find out who this band is and what's the sound and everything, there's no distinction between like what was Shrimp Boat music and what was the Sea and Cake. So like the closest I got in those couple of years where I was hanging out in those coffee shops and hearing it, I could sometimes find Shrimp Boat stuff. And then I would dive into Shrimp Boat and I'd be like, these are not the songs that I know and love. Like, this is clearly the guy and everything. But at that time, like, you couldn't even figure out the guy's name.
Right. Sam Prekop.
Right. Like, I knew it was the same singer because it sounds the same. And I knew that the guitar player was the same because they're playing the same guitar parts.
Archer Pruitt.
Not the songs that I really liked that I was hearing in the coffee shops. So then fast forward a couple of years, I'm dating another barista, a different barista.
Is she named Becky?
She was also named Becky. I don't know.
You have a type?
I don't know. Not based on a name, I hope. If it was that easy, I could just do a Google search. Who's the most Becky of Becky's? Anyways, this girl was working at Barnes & Noble.
Okay.
So I was always spending my time, checking things out. And that was a good place to get new music back in the day.
Yeah.
Was Barnes & Noble. And there was this album. It was We.
Okay, so
by the Sea and Cake.
By that point, that's like 97, 99, somewhere in there.
Yes. It's several years later. Like, I'm driving. I'm like a full-blown teen. We might even be like starting college, like around then. Senior year. Definitely senior year past. So that would have been, 97. Okay. And this album was always catching my eye. And I didn't know anything about it.
We was 2000. I just checked.
Perfect. Yes. It was always catching my eye when I leafed through the CDs, The cover is simple and everything. It says We, to my memory, it didn't say the Sea and Cake on the original release on the front of it.
I can't remember.
It just said We, O-U-I.
Yeah.
And it was the photography on the outside of the CD case that really caught my attention. And it was just, I knew nothing about the music or the band. It just really, it caught my attention every time I'd see it in a CD store. Finally, I just bought it. I was like, what is this? It's always catching my attention.
And you're like, holy shit, this is that fucking guy, that band.
Yes, exactly. So Sam Prekop is a photographer. Of course, I didn't know that then. I didn't know who he was at all.
Yeah.
But even at that time, I thought of photography as kind of a lower tier artistic expression, right?
I see.
I think that's just my youthful, like, I've got a camera. I can point at anything you want.
Right.
Right. But it just kept catching my attention, and I was just enamored with this photography on the album. So I bought it. I just bought it. And then when I listened to it, I was like, oh, fuck.
It's come full circle.
This is it. Yeah. This is what I was looking for.
For, at that point, 6 years or so.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's wild.
So I found it in a way that like didn't even really connect like with the actual music. It was just
so funny.
Something about his artistry. And this is what I've learned too, is that like since then, is that like my appreciation of these artists and people who do these things are not always so set in like trying to emulate them.
Sure.
It's just that some people's like artistic tastes are so good that you should just pay attention.
You're talking about Sam Prekop here? Or them in general? All of them, I guess?
Them in general. But yes, Sam Prekop in particular, because he, like I said, like that really drew me in.
Yeah.
Like his art outside of the music. His music drew me in first when I didn't know who he was. And then his art outside the music drew me in again and brought me full circle. So
that's cool. It's funny. I had such a different experience in getting into this album.
Okay.
Similar in some ways. So in 1995 and years before that, I've mentioned this on the show before, there's quite a few years there where, you know, you're 13, 14, 15 years old, you've got some expendable income because it's not like you're paying fucking rent. So you've got money to burn if you've got money. And so what I would do typically is I would frequently like peruse catalogs, you know, so I'd like read like the CZ catalog, I'd read the SST catalog, I'd read the Thrill Jockey, the Touch and Go, I'd read all these catalogs and just read their descriptions of bands. And I'd buy a bunch of albums that way. I just like, well, that sounds cool. I'll buy that. Yeah. So I picked up Nassau from 1995, their second album, on CD when it came out, on a complete lark. Just like, this sounds cool the way that the reviewer described it. So I gave it a shot. And of course, I fucking fell in love with it and obsessed over it. And the Sea and Cake ended up being one of those bands that even as I went through all of these movements into different genres and being obsessed with screamo and punk and ska and all this other shit, they were just one of the few bands that I never sit down. There's a lot of bands that I sat down and came back to, but the Sea and Cake, like I would just listen to every single album that they put out and I just followed them throughout their whole career. And no matter what genre I was into, in my deepest screamo whatever, I was still like, the Sea and Cake. Yeah. But I never listened to the first album. Since I started with the second album, I just kept on like going with the new albums, you know? And I became aware of this album, but by that point, I was already like, I'm good, you know, I've got all this other stuff. So I didn't actually start listening to this album until after Any Day came out in 2018, because my favorite member of this band is Eric Claridge, the bass player. He is my favorite bass player by far. I fucking love his work so much. So when Any Day came out, you know, he left because of carpal tunnel syndrome. So when Any Day came out, I'm like, this is good, but I miss Eric Claridge. So I'm like, oh, fuck, there's still one album I'd never listened to before. So in 2018 is when I finally started listening to this album. And then it ended up being the album I've listened to the most since then, the past 6 years. Like, you know, whenever I want to listen to them, this is the album I'm least familiar with. So it's the one I'll throw on for like 6 years. So now it's like the one I listen to all the time. It's kind of weird.
Yeah, that's great. I was pretty much 180 degrees opposite of that. Like I did not appreciate a lot of their work, which was prolific, and they did a lot of stuff between the Sea and Cake album and We.
Gotcha.
But that's only because, and this goes back to what we were talking about earlier, is how you collected and found music.
Yeah.
I think the fact that it was a self-titled album, like there's songs that were much more modern that I thought were on that album. Because when I had good internet access and was like, boom, I'm going to get everything from the Sea and Cake
off Napster or whatever.
Or there were so many songs that I thought were on that album that were years apart. And they're still like cataloged in my library that way because just didn't have any better frame of reference, any way of knowing what was correct.
Gotcha.
You're just collecting music off LimeWire or off whatever. So I didn't really have an understanding of what was on this album specifically until the last few weeks, really.
No. Wow.
And you were like, hey, do you want to go do the Sea and Cake album? I'm like, hell yeah, I know that album forward and backwards.
And it turns out.
Incorrect. I just had it miscategorized. But I guess all that is to say that there's just consistently being putting out good music forever. Like they just keep doing it. And their old bands that I was talking about are just a continuation of that. Tortoise.
Tortoise is not an old band so much as John McEntire's band that he was in, I think, before joining the Sea and Cake, or certainly at the same time. John McEntire is the kind of guy that, like, I mean, he's also played with Broken Social Scene. He's produced a lot. He bounces around and he's a multi-instrumentalist, you know?
Yeah, and they're still putting out music.
Yeah, exactly.
So
Tortoise is, yeah.
Yes.
And then you also have a lot of solo albums. I mean, Sam Prekop has released a lot of solo albums. Archer Pruitt has released at least one or two. And then John McEntire's released stuff with other bands. So they're pretty, Eric Claridge is the only one that really hasn't gone outside of that band that much. But he also was, you mentioned the photography of Sam Prekop. Well, half the albums are like either photographs taken by Sam Prekop or paintings by Eric Claridge. And I think that was always like his outlet, painting.
So Sam Prekop and Eric Claridge were in Shrimp Boat. Archer Pruitt whose guitar playing I love, was in Cocktails.
Okay.
And that's very similar style. And then John McEntire was in Tortoise, the drummer. And that's more different than anything else the other guys are doing. Similar, but it's the most different.
Yeah. And to me, there's such a powerful 4-piece. There's a ton of bands I love that I couldn't name anyone outside the singer. Like we saw Sunny Day Real Estate recently. I could name, well, now I could probably name most of them. But like for a long time, I couldn't, but these 4 guys, Sam Prekop and Eric and John and Archer, like to me, they've just been they've just been.
Check them out. They're always going to be doing something cool.
They're always doing stuff that's very cool.
And still are. And they're old as fuck now.
They still are. So that album came out their last album came out in 2018. John McEntire and Sam Prekop released like a electronica album. They've gotten a lot more into
They've been doing that a lot lately,
Yeah, stuff that used to be kind of like these interstitials between songs have become more and more like what they do, which is not my favorite stuff, but I respect the fact that they're going to just progress and change and do what makes them happy as they get older.
Actually goes into a lot of my thoughts about the band, which is that jazz comes from a desire to recreate written pieces of music with the present feeling that you have while you're playing it.
Planned spontaneity, right?
Yes. So it's an interpretation of written music that the interpretation is based on your feeling in that moment. And so that electronic music that they do is so much better live. It's just a live experience more than it is a recorded and played back experience.
So going back to the self-titled album, I asked you to pick a favorite song from it. Could you?
Yeah, easily it's Jacking the Ball.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of had a feeling when we started talking about it from the start, since it was a song that kind of pulled you into them in the first place.
Absolutely.
It's not surprising that would be your main go-to there. Awfully provocative song title and lyrics, in my opinion. I mean, I'm sure they're talking about, I don't know, winching or like towing or something much more mechanical, but like Jacking the Ball, it sounds like something that 13-year-old boys do by themselves.
Hey, look at that's funny because I never, as right up in your face as it is, no, I guess my initial interpretation took enough precedence that even my 13-year-old boy side didn't really catch on to that.
I wish I was a grown-up too.
The Jacking the Ball, and I never really listened to his lyrics much to try to interpret them.
I don't even know if the lyrics matter. Like, they're not a band I go to for the lyrics, you know what I mean?
I agree. It's all about like the feel and everything. And he's described as doing like a flow of consciousness type lyrics, which I like. Yeah, I really like that. Like, you know, like the same way like Pavement does, or like other bands that do that.
I hear a lot of Pavement in this album, actually, particularly Sam Prekop's vocals. I feel like he gets more into his own later on, but I do kind of feel like listening to this album, like, I bet he was listening to a lot of Slanted and Enchanted around this time.
I could see that, for sure. Yeah. I kind of went a different way with my interpretation, where there's one song on there that, like, he's very much channeling Lou Reed. And I love it, and it just works so well. Yeah. But yeah, the lyrics never... And I always thought of Jacking the Ball as like a sports reference of like stealing the ball and taking control.
Okay, that's funny. Yeah, mine was like some sort of mechanical reference, like someone's towing a car or something,
Yeah, right.
and you're going into sports. That's funny. Probably neither one of us is right, but who cares? It's one of the stronger opening songs, I think, from all their albums, which says a lot because they're really good specialists at kicking off their albums. They always pick.
Agreed.
Even on their solo stuff, and like they're just really talented at knowing what's the best song to start off with, because they always produce their own stuff for the most part. Brad would produce this album with them.
Yeah, there's a couple people that produced this album that I was surprised by when I started looking at it, but then again, not so much. Once I started learning about other things that those producers did, I was like, oh shit, yeah,
makes sense.
But about how they're so good at not just opening song, but like pacing and feel of an album.
Yeah.
And I feel like they're just so good at that. Like that's their music all together is just like so good at pacing and locking on to a feeling and just working it, you know, perfectly. Like they just really hone in onto that. And it goes back to what I was saying about like jazz as a style of music. Like it's just a in the moment feeling and interpretation of the music, and they do a good job of kind of harnessing that and putting it down for posterity. Like they're good at capturing a moment and a feeling, and it really works well.
I agree. I went with a different favorite song for this album. I've always had the same favorite song for this album, which I feel like is maybe not everyone's favorite song.
What is it?
Bring My Car, I Feel to Smash It. That song. It's so good on so many different levels because it's one of the most chill songs on the album.
It is.
And one of the most like groovy, like jam band almost.
Yes.
What Claridge is doing on that album.
Jam band.
Yeah, right? They're a little bit of a jam band there. And you really hear it on this song.
A lot of my notes mentioned that one of the reasons that I listened to them a lot is because it was an agreeable alternative with my hippie friends. It wasn't punk or hardcore, and it wasn't, grunge or whatever else we were listening to at the time.
Yeah, it's very its own thing.
But it was very largely agreeable with the two types of musics that my groups of friends listened to were punk, hardcore, and, I don't know what to call it, like hippie stuff, like Fish, Grateful Dead, stuff like that.
Right.
And this was something you could put on and make everybody happy.
Yeah. And also, there's something about the phrasing of "Bring my car, I feel to smash it." It's so like I don't know. It sounds almost like medieval, but he's talking about a car. And as someone that has had nothing but lemons almost my whole life, I've had such bad time with cars for most of my life. I dig the sentiment. Like, you know what? Just fucking bring me my car. I'm gonna smash it to shit. I'm done with this thing. Fucking move on with my life. But it's all with this very just stony, relaxed vibe. Like, yeah, man, my car's fucked.
I was actually listening to this song one time when it was around either senior year of high school or freshman year of college, and me and Morgan Peak were both driving shitty cars around.
Friend of the show, Morgan Peak.
And we came to an intersection. We happened to run into each other at an intersection. I was behind him and just started smashing our cars into each other.
Oh, I actually heard about this event. And you were listening to that song, and that's what
Yeah.
Was it leaving the high school?
It was near there. I mean, that wasn't my high school, but we were near your guys' high school. Yeah, for sure.
I think that it happened
like
more than once.
23 and 59. Old 23 and 59.
I think it happened more than once, to be honest, because Morgan drove a big boat, and like it was the kind of thing that you knew could take it. So I know I think I nudged him every now and then too.
We got this particular time. We really got into it, and it was back and forth, like because he didn't know I was there, and I was right behind him. So I just smashed into the back of him.
You felt to smash it.
And then he put it in reverse and smashed into me. And then, like, we were both trying to turn left. We were probably going to the same place, you know, after school or whatever.
Right.
And yeah, just continued bumper cars, like, through the intersection. We got, like, stopped in the intersection because I can't remember if it was either mine or his car, like, wouldn't go for a second because we're bashing into each other. And then we got out of there. Yeah.
Too funny.
Yep.
Now, what about a least favorite song on this album? Were you able to pick one?
Yes.
Let's hear it.
Easily. Yes. There's actually 2 songs on this album that I just don't like.
I'm going to ask you to narrow it down to one, though.
Yes. So my least favorite song, Calabra Cut.
Okay, I can understand that. It's the only instrumental on the album.
Yes.
But it does have kind of it doesn't have quite the same vibe as the rest of the album.
It doesn't. And it's interesting because it's just what we were talking about, and this is my note on it. My least favorite song, but probably why it was an acceptable compromise between me and my hippie friends.
Oh, I see.
Right?
Yeah, I can get that. Because it's, again, jammy.
Right, exactly. I didn't like it. It was not my thing, but I knew my hippie friends would like it, and then I'd be able to listen to this band when they're around because they like that song.
Mm-hmm.
So it stuck out in that way to me. Like, I don't like it. I just don't like this song. But I knew other people would.
No, I can understand that. I feel like this album is filled with a lot of really standout songs, but there is kind of around the middle of something of a slump where things kind of bleed into each other a little bit and aren't as standout. And I think that kind of gets that vibe going. It's really just like that in Bombay, I guess. But my least favorite song, I ended up not going with Calabra Cut. I ended up going with the last song, Lost in Autumn.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so I feel like this song...
out of character.
It's not so much that it's out of character. It's that I don't feel like it's a strong song to end the album on.
I agree.
And I also feel like there's this weird thing going on in this album where Brad Wood, the producer, is bringing in different saxophones here and there, which for 1993, 1994, that's bold. You know, we're just getting away from all that shit. And so like to be bringing that in, I think that's really cool. And I think that every time I listen to Lost in Autumn, I'm waiting for the saxophone to kick in, and it finally does. I'm like, fuck yeah, there it is. And it's like 2 measures, and then the song's over. And I'm like, oh, right. Yeah. They really should have done like much more of this or something. I don't know. I guess if my complaint is that I wanted more of it, that's not really exactly the worst song. But that does kind of say something about this album, too. It's a fucking great album that even my least favorite song on here could be a genuinely really good song.
Yeah, I agree with you. My thoughts that I jotted down on this song was that this song reminds me a bit of a moodier Built to Spill song.
I can see that.
Definitely the moodiest song of the album.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe of the whole band. Lots of blues references in the chord choices, and the vocals have a darker mood than most all of Sam's work that I know of.
Yeah.
Not a big fan of this one. it went to the bluesier side of what they're doing, and that's what's been done to death.
Yeah.
You know, like, I felt like it just wasn't necessary at all.
What I do hate about it, and there's only one thing I hate about it, is that the track has like 3 minutes of silence at the end of it because there's a hidden track, but then that hidden track is missing from Spotify, and I couldn't find it on YouTube.
I'm not sure if I've heard it. I don't know, because again, of the way of that, like, maybe if I go back to Thrill Jockey and actually buy the album, I'll hear it.
I think I'm gonna have to.
I wouldn't mind having it, so yeah, I'd be happy to buy it.
I didn't know it existed until recently. I'm like, shit, I should probably pick this up on vinyl or something then, so I can at least hear this long lost Sea and Cake song. But yeah, it is a good song, and I guess it's not technically the album ender if there's a hidden track, but more or less it is. There's other songs on this album that I think would have made a better last song.
There's two other songs in the album that I'm like, and then this song I just straight up don't like. Well, I also don't like you said, right in the middle of it.
Is it Bombay?
Bombay.
Yeah. So what about your underrated track? Could you pick a track on this album that you think is underrated?
I did. I thought about it.
It's always the hardest question to answer, I think, on this show.
It wasn't so hard for me.
Good.
Actually, there's one definitely, and I know it, but you know how I am with song titles and things are not a thing to me. You know, I like what I like, and I just kind of keep it close without...
I've had to get better about that as I've gotten older, because most of my life, song titles didn't matter to me either. They're always just like track 3, track 4, whatever. I just didn't give a shit, or I just cared about the album.
Exactly.
So some of my favorite songs for a while, I really wasn't even 100% sure what the name was and stuff.
100% same. I didn't know what the name of the real songs were. I still don't.
One of the things about this show is that it's helped force me to familiarize myself with some of the song titles and some of my favorite albums better.
Yeah, and this exercise of getting ready for this show like made me realize kind of the value in that, which I had realized in the past, because it's just so hard to keep track of the things you like, especially as more and more stuff comes out.
Sure.
That knowing that stuff is valuable. But like, yeah, I was so bad at it that like I mainly tried to keep in my mind like record labels and distribution companies, because I was like, that's who I know I like, and you know they'll be putting out stuff I like much more than like trying to keep track of even band names and song titles and album titles and stuff.
Especially back in the day when we were ordering stuff from them directly a lot of the time.
Yeah, exactly.
What'd you land on for your underrated?
Absolutely, it's got to be track number 9, So Long the Captain.
Absolutely, for me too. That song is fucking great.
It's a great song.
That guitar work, oh man.
I just love it. And it's one of those things that got into my mind as a young person and just permeated. And I didn't even really notice it until I was examining it for the show in this way. I was like, fuck, I've been ripping off those riffs and that sound like forever.
Those lift-offs and stuff, you do that all the time, right?
You want to hear my notes that I wrote down when I was preparing? Right. So Long the Captain, really good song. Reminds me of the more rock-based guitar bands we like. mostly like Appleseed Cast and Built to Spill and Minus the Bear and Modest Mouse, early Modest Mouse, stuff like that.
Stuff they probably influenced.
Absolutely, yes. And then I wrote, I'm always ripping off pull-off arpeggios like this.
You are.
Yeah. Could be the most underrated song by others because I remember trying back then to turn others onto it when bands like Cursive, Appleseed Cast, Modest Mouse, etc. were the topic of discussion, and I don't remember anyone ever really biting on it. It was so close to a lot of those riffs and guitar music that, you know, a lot of our friends and our group of company liked a lot, but it didn't really seem to grab them the same way it grabbed me.
I didn't even know that you liked this band until we were at which concert? We were at Built to Spill, and you told me, hey, how about I do the Sea and Cake album? I'm like, oh, Cory likes the Sea and Cake? I didn't even fucking know that. Because growing up, I knew that our friend Andrew Johnson liked them.
Yep.
Back in the early day.
He's got to come up always.
Oh, he comes up on like every episode in the show. Like,
I was going to say, I was like, I'm sure that I went and tried to hear the Sea and Cake, the first album stuff from him, and I was hearing it in the records like, I've been hearing this. What is it? And he probably would have had a good answer. But,
yeah, so I knew that he liked it, and our buddy Jim,
I didn't know he was a fan.
He liked Wee. But other than that, like, I didn't know any friends that they were even on their radar. Just never really talked about it with anybody.
I tried to push it on people a couple times. But, you know, like
we must have just, you know, ships passing in the night on the Sea and Cake, because I don't remember ever talking to you about it, but I've loved them for 30 years almost now. It's funny.
The Sea and Cake was one of the bands that, again, I knew like none of my friends or my close acquaintances were like into in the same way that I was. So I was always putting it on. Like whenever there was a house party or something where it would fit the vibe, I'd sneak it in there and stuff. And yeah, I don't really remember anybody really biting on it. Farrington liked it. Funny. My old girlfriend in high school, but I don't know. You know, I wouldn't know if she
one of the Beckys
really like one of the Beckys. Yeah. If she like really liked it and got into it like outside of our relationship or whatever.
How do you not like it? I don't think there's any faking liking the Sea and Cake.
It's so appealing.
I mean, to people, like you said earlier, like just a broad swath of people with musical interests are going to find value in this band because of what they're doing.
Exactly. Yeah. And from so many different angles. I think that's one of the things I love about it so much is that like it plays on my guitar interests like hard. Like if you take the songs that I play for you like these days and like took out like all the overcompensating like guitar effects and stuff that I use, like it's a lot of those sounds, they're very similar. It's kind of like the way that I look at my music consumption is that it kind of takes the best from a couple of different places and puts it together. And I think that's what's like so appealing about it. Like there's nothing to complain about it.
No.
If you didn't like it, what would your complaint be? Oh, it feels too good.
Yeah, it makes me happy.
It makes me too happy. Like, yeah, exactly. Like what? Like it's great.
I'm glad you chose So Long to the Captain, since I chose it too, as being an underrated song. I think it's really representative of a lot of, like, there's two sides to this band in a lot of ways. There's like this kind of more serious side that So Long to the Captain kind of brings you. And then I want to highlight one more song, even though I'm kind of going outside my regular categories that I set up. But the song Showboat Angel, I think also is very representative of like who they become and that lighter, fun party side of them. Like that song kicks off and it's just immediately like, oh yeah, I'm at a fucking party and I'm in a good mood. The beer is flowing, the weed is smoking, like everyone's having a good time.
Want to hear my notes about
I do.
Angel?
That's why I asked you to be on the show.
Next favorite after Jacking the Ball, I really like the mix of guitar tones, more distortion than most of the album. Has a strong Lou Reed feel, which I freaking love. And then I was thinking the same things that you were just saying about that. Like, it's one of the songs, I think I mentioned another one too that I used to do that I used to try to kind of push people on and be like, check this out, dude. You're gonna fucking love it.
Yeah, it's a great song. It's a lot of fun. Yeah. I love the vocal stylings of Sam Prekop. He kind of got away from doing the wow thing that, I can't do it, but you know what I'm talking about. He kind of got away from doing that. But the first few albums, every time he throws that out, I'm like, yeah, there it is, that Prekop yowl. I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so cool.
And it's something that I wouldn't have really put together. I just wouldn't have made the connection, I don't think, if I hadn't taken this time to kind of really examine it in a different way. But the Lou Reed connection, I'm going to look at more of their music, Sam's music, through that lens.
Interesting.
Because on that song, it feels like he's channeling Lou Reed like hard.
Never even occurred to me, but I'll have to listen to it.
Yeah, definitely do. And think about that when you listen to it.
Yeah.
I was thinking about this as I was listening to the album. The way that they play and their composition of songs reminded me a lot of Fat Mike's advice for writing songs.
Okay.
And he was talking specifically about punk songs.
Of course.
But I think it really kind of translates well. His advice was soft picking for speed, not to worry about hitting the chord all together, to keep your pick moving over the chord. And the guitar fills are as much for rhythm as they are for melody. And the way that you kind of rush in those melodies. Like, if you're thinking about classical music, the way that you put an overture in the beginning, when I do like a quick 1-minute recording of a song and I send it to you for an idea, like that's what I'm doing. I'm putting like the overture of the song in there. So I'm like putting like all parts of the song into like one quick part of the song.
Okay.
Which is very much like a punk way of doing songs. But Scene Cake absolutely does that. They do the fast, soft picking. They're not always worried about hitting the chord that it resolves on perfectly. They're moving on and they're bouncing. It's where that energy and that feel comes from.
Yeah.
I just love that. It's just, it speaks to me perfectly. That's how I play. That's how I feel when I play. And it just really speaks to me. So there's a lot of that in every song on here.
A couple more questions for you. Is We your favorite album of theirs, since that's kind of the first full album you got into? What's your favorite Scene Cake album, I guess is what I'm asking.
We. For sure.
Yeah.
We, start to finish, just fucking love it. It just grabbed me right away, and I never let go.
It's a lot of people's favorite. I get it.
They're such a great band. It was the first time that they really got like a strong marketing push.
Yeah, and it's also like when they first kind of released, well, I guess The Fawn is when they kind of start introducing electronic elements into their music, but they get a little bit more confident with it on We. So it's kind of it's definitely, it's a hinge point in their career.
Yeah.
So it makes sense that it'd be a lot of people's favorites. My favorite is actually The Biz, their third album. Even though Nassau is the one I got into, The Biz was the one that like I really made my own. And I kind of always tend to lean towards earlier albums of some of my favorite bands. I like it when they're like still a little sloppy, but starting to get really precise. Same. And starting to get really more confident. So like The Biz is like right there in the cusp of that.
I'm a demo guy. 100%. Prefer the demos to the albums. 100%.
I like things a little unpolished, but still with that proficiency. And so The Biz is my album. But one last question about the Scene Cake for you. Have you seen them live? It sounds like you have. You mentioned electronic stuff earlier. Have you seen them live?
No, I've never seen them or any of their members live.
Oh, shit. Okay. I've got some stories. I'm going to tell some stories real quick.
Awesome.
I've seen them 3 times, and all 3 times was magic. Fucking magic. First time I saw him with our friend Andrew Johnson, who I mentioned earlier. Speaking of The Biz, it was on that tour, and they played the Magic Stick. The Magic Stick accidentally advertised the show as an all-ages show when it wasn't.
Oh, no.
So we showed up, and they're like, you can't come in. Like, you're 16 years old or 15 years old or whatever. We're like, no, you can't come in. But this is 1995, 1996. This is before cell phones are around. So we were literally like, his mom dropped us here. Like, if we don't come inside here, we're just roaming around Detroit for a couple hours or so. And he's like,
that's so funny. I'm sorry to interrupt your story, but it just makes me think like that would have been the time that we were back to hanging out a lot again.
Yeah.
And just never
even talked about it.
Yeah.
Tortoise opened up and Andrew brought a little like he hit a little tape recorder on him and he recorded both shows, and we were able to have those for a long time. So that was really cool and special.
So you did eventually get in.
Yeah. That's what I'm saying. Like, we told them that like we would just be roaming around Detroit. We're like, look, we're stuck here. And they're like, fine, you can come in, just stay by the stage. Don't go back by the bar. We're like, that's easy. No problem there. And so we went right to the front of the stage and watched the whole show, and it was amazing.
Awesome.
Yeah. And then I didn't see him again for a long time. I didn't see him again until probably, I would guess 04 or so. If I had to guess, I saw him, I forget the second time I saw him. I think it may have been the Majestic again or a similar place. It was very much like we were right there. We were like on top of them,
Smaller club.
Very small club. And I was standing, I don't know, 4 feet from Archer Pruitt. Like he was right in front of me the whole show. There was no one between me and him. And at some point during the show, this is my big claim to fame in my life. One of the high points of my life. People, like the audience started yelling. Because, you got fucking nerds in a Sea and Cake show. The audience started yelling, instead of like Skinnerd and that kind of shit, the audience started yelling literary references at the band. And I yelled, "Call me Ishmael!" And I made Archer Pruitt laugh really hard. And I've always really prided myself on that.
That's something you can stand by for sure.
Put that in my head. Awesome. And then the last time I saw him was, what a fucking great place to see him. I saw him at the Museum of Modern Art in Detroit. And
awesome.
Yeah, they set up like
Why
in the middle.
Call me for this shit, you dildo.
I don't know, because you were married and not hanging out with me.
All right. My fault.
This was like maybe 05, I would guess. 06.
I was in South Carolina then.
Yeah, you weren't even living here, so there you go. They set up like in the middle of like the art. They set up in the middle of the art, and we were able to, and again, I got like super close. I could have reached out and touched Eric Claridge. Literally, I was like right there on the side of the stage. It was so cool. And every time they just were magic, man. It was dead on. No flaws. They're so good live.
Yeah,
all right. So I always end my show with a question, or questions as the case may be, that are shift gears. I try and suit it for each one of my guests, unless I'm feeling really lazy, in which case I just ask about movies or something.
You just told me that you're about to ask me a series of questions, which are either curated or not, depending largely on how you feel about the guest. So I want to know.
No.
Or you?
It's about how lazy.
That's what you said. We're moving on.
That's not what I said. I said depending on how lazy I am. I said depending on how lazy I am.
That's what you said, and we're moving on.
I try and curate the questions for the guest. Sometimes I'm too lazy.
These questions they're about to ask.
Sometimes I'm too lazy to do that. So I got some that I've curated for you personally, because you and I are both hardcore trivia fans. I think out of all my friends, I mean, there's a few of our friends that are really into trivia, but you and me, I don't think we'd ever get sick of it.
Fan, like I'm obsessed, like trivia is. I feel like that's like part of like my core self.
Yeah, like we would never get sick of it.
Shit that people are annoyed by the fact that you know it.
So I've got Trivial Pursuit here. I've got the original Trivial Pursuit, not really, but I've got the original Trivial Pursuit here. I'm going to ask you one question from each category. All right. Now I made these questions up myself, but I feel like they're questions that would fit in a Trivial Pursuit game. Oh,
so you're aware of the questions beforehand?
Yeah, I'm aware. So I'm quizzing you. Okay.
Well, I feel good then. I feel like you wouldn't want to embarrass me, and you're like, oh, Cory might know this. Okay.
I think there's a good chance you'll get all of them except for one.
Got it.
Okay.
Right, let's do it. Now I have a challenge. I'm going to get that one.
All right. We'll see. I wouldn't. All right. So you've landed on blue, the original geography. Now it's people and places, but originally it was just geography.
I always think of it as geography. Yeah.
So I have a classic geography question for you. Which country in the world has the longest coastline?
The longest coastline country. I don't know this offhand, so I have to start using my brain power.
I like that. Use your brain power.
And the U.S. has a lot. Between the Gulf and Florida and the East and West Coast and Alaska and Hawaii, which is an island, that's got to be a lot. But geographically, much larger is China, but it's only got the East Coast. Australia is quite large and is all coast. Fuck. Oh, Russia's a good one because of the northern coast and all the islands there, but they don't count that. They count that ice as like a landmass. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to guess Australia.
Canada.
Fuck that. That's bullshit. All right, got it.
It makes sense though, right? Once you start thinking about how broken up it is up there.
Yes, the whole bay up there. Yes, it's. Yep. I should have. Because I thought of Alaska, which is just a small part of Canada. I was like, oh, that's got to be a big part of the coast of the U.S.
I thought you were getting there when you said Alaska.
God damn it. Well.
All right. So you rolled again, and now you've landed on pink, which, of course, is arts and entertainment, or just entertainment. What director and pioneer of the genre of the spaghetti western directed Clint Eastwood in Sergio Leone is correct. Didn't even need to name the movies or the trilogy. Sergio Leone is correct. Good. All right. So you're 1 for 0.
What did I say? Sergio Leone is, it's right. So I got it in my head now, but I'm interested. What did I say?
I think you said Sergio Leone, didn't you?
Yeah, I definitely left like the G sound out.
I think so. But
anyway,
you knew it. You knew it.
Yeah.
Sergio Leone. Yeah. It was a soft G. Sergio Leone.
That's how we say it.
Oh, well. All right. So you get to roll again, and you land on brown, unless it's a new edition, in which case it's purple, which is arts and literature.
Okay, I usually do all right here.
Legendary Mexican painter Frida Kahlo was married off and on to what other legendary Mexican painter?
I always ignored this on purpose. I really did. I seriously did. I thought, like, I don't want to fucking know about the man in her life. I just did that on purpose. I don't know.
Diego Rivera.
All right.
Yeah. Moving on. You've landed on green. Science and nature. What is the world's largest cephalopod?
A cephalopod is like, that's like not, they don't have a spine.
Correct.
Okay, the largest, man, there's these like centipedes like from Vietnam. Is this like ever, like not in history, like living? Because then they used to
currently,
yeah.
Say, yeah, living. Good clarification there.
Largest cephalopod.
Mm-hmm.
Fuck if I know. I don't know.
Give up?
Give me one more second. Yeah, I give up. I don't know.
Would it help if I told you that cephalopods are exclusive to oceans?
No, because I was thinking of like millipedes and centipedes, and then I was like, no, that doesn't count. They're underwater. And then even after I got to that, I still...
Okay. So it's the giant squid.
Oh, no, fuck. Yeah.
Or the colossal squid, depending on which one you run into.
No, again, that's obvious, but my mind was so... Since I started on like centipedes and millipedes and then got there, I was thinking of things that are like that underwater and couldn't get there. Fuck, but I know that if my mind hadn't latched on to that, why didn't you tell me we were going to do trivia before I smoked that joint? Like, I smoked a joint like 2 minutes ago. So like, you were like, I was like, oh, good, this is almost over. I'm going to shut off my brain. And
I didn't say it's almost over. You should shut off your brain. In fact, I said, hey, I can't smoke weed today because I'm getting surgery tomorrow. I thought maybe you'll, Oh,
I should respect
that.
Yeah,
exactly.
Fuck off.
Well, enjoy your weed, because here's your last question you're not going to fucking get, because you've only gotten one so far.
God damn it. Give me another card.
You've landed on orange. Sports and leisure.
Oh, no.
The question is, what disabled Canadian jockey is best known for riding Seabiscuit? This is a real question.
I don't know. I always thought that was a fake question.
This is a running joke for us about impossible Trivia Pursuit questions. And
start with those like 5 words. What the disabled Canadian jockey?
It's a real question. I had to look it up. I have no idea what this guy is. Want me to tell you?
Yeah.
Red Pollard. So now we have an answer. Now we have an answer. When next time our friend Eric says, what disabled Canadian jockey? We can say,
like,
Red Pollard. So you're 1 for 5 there. I think you lost, my friend. I'm sorry.
I certainly did. Well, it's good because I was feeling really good about the podcast and how I did it on it. And then really took me back down to earth.
I'm sorry. You want me to cut all this out? Make you look good?
No, you know how this goes. You're better than I am. I'm not putting us in the same tier. I don't mean it. But people that are good at trivia only annoy and bug the shit out of people who like aren't as good at it. So like, yeah.
So I'm unbothered. Yeah, definitely. As are you.
Show everyone. Even people that are smug about their trivia knowledge also might not be so great at trivia. Maybe it's just a thing that they like to brag about.
It makes me feel good about myself until I have to answer questions.
Fuck! Can we skip this part and just tell everybody I take it?
Audience, I will say, I've played a lot of trivia with the man, and 1 out of 5 is not his normal outcome here.
Yeah, I'm not defending myself, but let me say Travis is a good friend who wouldn't just set someone up to fail.
Except for with one question, which I definitely did.
Yeah, right? That was crazy. I can't believe that's a real question.
I warned you weren't going to get it.
Yeah, it's so funny.
Cory, buddy, thank you so much for doing this. I love you very much. I appreciate you coming on the show.
But I had a great time. Thanks for having me.
Me too. So that was the first and hopefully not last time that my good buddy Cory Worley has come on 9394. For the record, the song title Jacking the Ball, I looked into it, post-interview, like you do. It's a reference to old-timey slang. To ball the jack, if you're balling the jack, it means that you are giving it your last best effort, whatever it is. So jacking the ball is kind of a play on that archaic slang. I am always looking for new guests. If you're interested in coming on, you'd be very welcome to. You could do any album from 1993 or 1994 that I haven't already done before. If you're looking for a suggestion, how about the album 13 from Teenage Fan Club?
I've been sold and I forgot what I've been told, and now I need someone of all the stars I've ever seen. You're the sun.
This is the opening song from that album, Hang On. It'd be cool to talk about them with someone that was a big fan. It'd be cool to talk about any album. Again, I'm not picky. Hit me up at 9394podcast@gmail.com if you want to be on the show. You can find me on Facebook. If you want to hear more of me, you can find me on my other podcasts. I have a movie podcast called Cinema 9 that I do with my buddies Eric and Mike. And I have a TV series podcast called Small Screen Sessions that I do with my friends Amanda and Steve. You can check those out. If you wanted to rate and review the show, particularly on Spotify or Apple, that would be nice. I have been given some less than generous ratings lately, so having that balanced would be cool. Rate and review if you're feeling generous. And that is where I will leave it for now. I will kind of just wind this up awkwardly like this now. Goodbye. '93.94, a music podcast with Travis Roy, is a labor of love. It is not and never will be monetized. Please don't sue.